Welcome back to Joshua's Magic, a channel about how the spiritual and the ordinary intersect. Today, we're going to be discussing the theme of harmlessness and considering various quotes from the Alice A. Bailey writings. So, first thing I would like to say is when considering the writings of Alice A. Bailey, who channeled the Tibetan, some of these ideals are really high and lofty. And so don't get despondent or put off by how high some of these ideals are. You can only do what you can do. And if you can make some progress towards some of these loftier goals like harmlessness, that's great. But maybe all you can do at the time is just consider it. So don't get down if these things seem too far out of reach. But it's good to have you all back. I hope you enjoyed this background. Let me know what you think of it in the comments. I'm not sure if I should use a background going forward or if it's off-putting for some reason. But let us get into the quotes for this week. Okay. By the way, these are all on my Instagram page if you'd like go over there and follow that to get these quotes daily or almost daily. He says, "May I speak a word here as to make this consummation a practical goal in your life? Harmful magnetic conditions as the result of man's wrong handling of forces are the cause of evil in the world around us, including the three subhuman kingdoms, meaning the animal, vegetable, and mineral. How can we as individuals change this? By the development in ourselves of harmlessness. Therefore, study yourselves from this angle. Study your daily conduct, the words and thoughts as to make them utterly harmless. Set yourself to think those thoughts about yourself and others, which will be constructive and positive, hence harmless in their effect. Study your emotional effect on others, so that by no mood, no depression, no emotional reaction can you harm a fellow man. Remember in this connection, violent spiritual aspiration and enthusiasm, misplaced or misdirected, may quite easily harm a fellow man. So look not only at your wrong tendencies, but at the use of your virtues. If harmlessness is the keynote of your life, you will do more to produce right, harmonious conditions in your personality than any amount of discipline along other lines. The drastic purgation brought about by this attempt to be harmless will go far to eliminate wrong states of consciousness. See to it, therefore, and bring this idea into your evening review. I would like to urge each of you who reads these pages to make a fresh beginning in spiritual living. I would say to him, forget all past achievements, realize fervor, and concentrate upon the plan." And that's from A Trees in White Magic, page 101 to 102. So he's talking about the value of harmlessness in offsetting all sorts of problems in the world today. And one thing he touches on is it's not just about not doing negative things to people, even the positive things. If you do them the wrong way or with too much intensity, that can cause some harm. But he's getting at the subtle levels of harm, not just like physical harm or severe emotional abuse. Like the way things work in the ageless wisdom is that on the deeper levels, things originate and then slowly emanate out into the more gross levels. So something starts as a thought and then it emanates down to the emotional level. And then when that gets enough attention, it'll emanate into some effect on the physical reality. So the root causes are usually thoughts and sometimes emotions of what we see in physical daily life. So that's part of why practicing harmlessness on a mental and emotional level is often emphasized, because that's the roots of, physical harm. And this is a very interesting line. If harmlessness is the keynote of your life, you will do more to produce harmonious conditions in your personality than any discipline along other lines. And I think that's something very deep to ponder. Um, you could meditate a certain way, you could, write papers on subjects and things. But if you're not considering them in a harmless way, you can do more damage than good, or it can be a mixed bag. I mean, it's really something you have to consider to see the value of, I think, of how harmlessness can do more to produce right harmonious conditions in your personality than any other discipline. So that's the first quote. And move on to the next one. By the way, if you're enjoying this video, please leave a like on it. It'd help me out, and I'd really appreciate it. A close study of one's emotional reactions brings one to the consideration of that basic characteristic which cannot be overemphasized in view of the world's present condition, harmlessness. I tell you that the achieving of harmlessness in the positive sense, not in the negative, means the attainment of that step which will lead definitely to the portal of initiation. When first mentioned, it sounds of small moment, and to bring the whole subject of initiation into such small account that it becomes unimportant. But let him who so thinks practice that positive harmlessness which works out in right thought because based on intelligent love, right speech because based on self-control, and right action because founded on an understanding of the law, meaning the spiritual law. And he will find that the attempt will call forth all the resources of his being and take much time to achieve. It is not the harmlessness that comes from weakness or sentimental loving disposition, which dislikes trouble because it upsets the settled harmony of life and leads to consequent discomfort. It is not the harmlessness of the little evolved, negative, impotent man or woman who has not the power to hurt because possessing so little equipment wherewithal damage can be done. It is the harmlessness that springs from true understanding and control of the personality by the soul, that leads inevitably to spiritual expression in everyday life. It emanates from a capacity to enter into the consciousness and to penetrate into the realizations of one's brother. And when this has been accomplished, all is forgiven and all is lost sight of in the desire to aid and help. And that's also from a treatise on white magic. And so he's elucidating the idea of harmlessness here, that it's not just constantly squelching yourself or avoiding, hurting other people's feelings, but it's a positive thing. It's actually doing good and helping, not just refraining from doing bad. And that's kind of an important point, because when you usually hear harmlessness, it's just about avoiding doing bad. And that's obviously a component of it. But a positive harmlessness is seeking to do good. Okay, and the next day, the student needs to remember that devotion to the path or to the master is not enough. The great ones are looking for intelligent cooperators and workers more than they are looking for devotion to their personalities. And a student who is walking independently in the light of his own soul is regarded by them as a more dependable instrument than a devoted fanatic. The light of his soul will reveal the earnest aspirant and unite the light of his soul will reveal to the earnest aspirant the unity underlying all groups and enable him to eliminate the poison of intolerance, which taints and hinders so many. It will cause him to recognize the spiritual fundamentals which guide the steps of humanity. It will force him to overlook the intolerance and the fanaticism and separativeness which characterize the small mind and the beginner upon the path, and help him so to love them that they will begin to see more truly and enlarge their horizon. It will enable him to estimate truly the esoteric value of service and teach him above all to practice that harmlessness which is the outstanding quality of every son of God. A harmlessness that speaks no word that can damage another person, that thinks no thought which could poison or produce misunderstanding, and which does no action which could hurt the least of his brethren. This is the main virtue which will enable the esoteric student to tread with safety the difficult path of development. When the emphasis is laid upon service to one's fellow man, and the trend of the life force is outward to the world, then there is freedom from danger, and the aspirant can safely meditate and aspire and work. His motive is pure. He is seeking to decentralize his personality and to shift the focus of his attention away from himself to the group. Thus, the life of the soul can pour through him and express itself as love to all beings. He knows himself to be a part of the whole, and the life that the whole can, to be part of the whole, of a whole, part of a whole, and the life of that whole can flow through him consciously, leading him to a realization of brotherhood and his oneness in relation to all manifested lives. So this one, he's talking about the great ones or the masters of wisdom, what they look for in disciples. And they don't want sort of blind fanatics who are just willing to follow orders and do what they think they've been told no matter what. But somebody who's following the light of their own soul. And harmlessness is really important because spiritual development is a kind of unity where you're coming up from the separate, isolated personality into the group level or the level of the soul where things are all connected. And if you're harming others, you're really not in alignment with that level of the soul. And in order to reflect that reality and move your consciousness up, you have to start aligning with soul values, let's call them. The next quote I'll be pulling up here. I would ask you, therefore, to practice purging the content of your minds of all critical and unkind thoughts, so that you can achieve an attitude of divine indifference to the ephemeral and fleeting personalities and to the chaos everywhere to be seen, and so endeavor to tune into the attitude of the spiritual hierarchy. This involves emphasis of the consciousness aspect and careful observation of all that goes on beneath the surface, awakening, arousing, stimulating to the pronounced mental activity. The heretofore unconscious masses. The events which are happening in every country are rapidly bringing this about with much rapidity. Humanity is coming alive and its consciousness is awakening to the subjective values. The hierarchy is sore beset to meet humanity's emerging need of guidance. The sensitivity of the human race as a result of economic insufficiency, of war, anxiety, and pain is becoming so acute that we who work on the inner side must hasten to impress sensitive, awakening psychics with right impression. Hence our effort to create these groups and to use people like yourselves who are theoretically harmless, but actually full of prejudice, hasty judgment, and hasty judgments. We have to use the material which we have at hand and are greatly handicapped at all times. And now this was written in the middle of the last century, so World War II was probably going on at the time. So the conditions were somewhat different than they are today. But many of the same things plague us, the anxieties, wars, and other things. What he's talking about here is the hierarchy, the spiritual hierarchy, the masters of wisdom, put out impressions to try to guide humanity in the right direction. And those who are sensitive to those pick up the impressions. But your own personality issues, your prejudices, hatreds, he says here, hasty judgments can get in the way of those things. It can color the impressions coming through. And having a harmless attitude really allows the impressions to come through more clearly, at least in one way. And you can be of real service and of real use in implementing these higher kind of ideals or inspirations that might come through to you. So the last quote we'll be considering is here. Let us remember, first of all, that no aspirant, no matter how sincere and devoted, is free from faults. Were he would be an adept. All aspirants are still selfish, still prone to temper and to irritability, still subject to depression and even at times to hatred. Oft that temper and hatred may be aroused by what we call just causes. Injustice on the part of others, cruelty to human beings and to animals, and the hatred and the viciousness of our fellow men do arouse in them corresponding reactions and cause them much suffering and delay. One thing must ever be remembered. If an aspirant evokes hatred in an associate, if he arouses him to temper, if he meets with dislike and antagonism, it is because he himself is not entirely harmless. There are still in him the seeds of trouble, for it is a law in nature that we get what we give. Excuse me. And produce reactions in line with our activity, our own activity, be it physical, emotional, or mental. There are certain types of men who do not come under this category. When a man has reached a stage of high initiation, the case is different. The seed ideas he seeks to convey, the work he is empowered to do, the pioneer enterprise he is endeavoring to carry forward may and often do call forth from those who sense not the beauty of his cause and the righteousness of the truth he enunciates, a hatred and a fury which causes him much trouble, and for which he is not personally responsible. This antagonism comes from the reactions and the devotees of the race. It should be remembered that it is largely impersonal, even though focused on him as the representative of an idea. But with these high souls, I deal not, but with the students of the ageless wisdom who are learning not only that they seldom think, but that when they do, they are often thinking wrongly. For they are forced into thought of activity by reactions which have their seat in their lower nature, which are based on selfishness and a lack of love. So here he's talking about how people starting off on the spiritual path often aren't very pure themselves and will engender negative reactions in others. And that's largely true. Like he says, you get what you give. But when somebody's reached a certain level of spiritual attainment and they're really able to focus on a pure ideal or a mission, they'll still get a lot of hatred and antagonism, but it'll be more to do with the other person than something inherent in their own nature. So these are the quotes we're considering today. If you have any comments or questions on them, let me know, and I'll respond to it in the comments. But I thought as an exercise today, we might consider what the greatest area you can work on to achieve harmlessness in your life is. So we'll just take a moment here and stop the video if you want longer to consider this, but we'll just take a breath, step back, and look back on your actions, step away from your life, and consider what area could you improve your harmlessness? What area could be worked on here? And just take as much time as you need to meditate on that, to ponder that. All right. Feel free to pause the video and consider it longer if needed. But I'd like to thank everybody for coming by. It means a lot to me that some people are interested in this endeavor and helping me move forward with it. I'd be interested in who's watching these. So if you'd like to share a little bit about yourself or what you value about these, I'd certainly appreciate hearing from you. But if not, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Oh, if you want updates on the live streams, I'll be putting it in posts in the YouTube posts. You can find those if you go to my channel and then click the community tab. If you like a few of those, YouTube will start suggesting them to you. So if I have to reschedule it or you want to find out what the theme is for the next week, you can go there and find out. Be well, everybody.